Hello, Hadley, and welcome to Rebuilding My Health. I'm so excited to have you here today to chat about your health journey and what worked for you and how you are today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to do this.
Great. Yeah. Well, would you start by just briefly introducing yourself, telling folks who you are?
Yeah, so I'm Hadley. I'm from Tennessee. I'm born and raised here. Went to college here and then grad school in Alabama. Worked in DC for a little bit and then came back home to Clarksville to publish a health book about nutrition, fitness, and faith, about my experience of overcoming Crohn's. And so my goal with the book, and I know we'll talk about this later, is to basically help other young people with autoimmune disease learn how to overcome their health challenges naturally.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. I love that mission and it's so important because I think autoimmune disease, as you know, is at record rates right now, and
Right.
kids are getting diagnosed younger. My son is a teenager and he has a couple of friends with autoimmunity. So um yeah, it's a good time for you to be bringing this information out there. So let's go back to when you were basically a middle schooler and
Right.
started experiencing some health challenges. What did that look like? How old were you and all that?
Yeah, so I kind of joke a little bit in the book. It felt like growing up, stomach problems were always my specialty. It just felt like I always had stomach aches and pains and a lot of gastrointestinal symptoms when I was growing up, and had a really bad spell when I was first and second grader, going through elementary school that lasted for about a year and had so many tests and things performed like that, but there was never anything diagnosed and symptoms just kind of went away on their own. A few years later, though, when I was 11, and in fifth grade, starting middle school, is when a lot of these symptoms really came back. And stomach pain, diarrhea, vomiting, all of that stuff, I was just kind of starting to wither away at the start of my sixth grade school year. And so this was August. I was really getting sick, just looking bad physically too. And so August, September, October, November, continued to get sick. I turned 12 at the time, in September of that year. And by November, I was only 4'9" and I was down to 53 pounds and just reached this point where I couldn't eat food without either immediately throwing it up, without sharp stomach pains, usually both. And so, kind of out of complete desperation, my regular doctor, they didn't know what to do. So we went to the emergency room at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital and did a few tests there, went back a few days later for the colonoscopy, and they ended up saying it's Crohn's disease or diagnosing me with that. And so we started on all the usual treatments, feeding tubes, steroids, and did that for the first 18 months or so. And then eventually moved into biologic drugs where I stayed for quite a while. But it's kind of a quick rundown on how I got it.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, which is just it's hard enough to be a middle schooler and
Yeah,
then
for sure.
to have yeah, a pretty serious health condition along with it. I imagine that must have been, yeah, really hard for you and your family to manage at the time. Yeah, and then, something where yeah, you gotta be in the bathroom many times a day. I mean, that makes it really hard to do life, have a normal life. So then
Exactly. And I,
yes.
I will say one other thing, like looking back to me, it's really bad experience, but at the same time, it's also kind of no surprise that I got sick and that I ended up getting this diagnosis because my diet was terrible. I was not a healthy eater as a kid. I was eating junk and I was skinny. I was, like I say, 53 pounds, not able to put on any weight at all. But we had really no understanding of nutrition and what to eat. I was not exercising at all. and my mind was in a pretty bad place. I mean, there's a lot of stress and awkwardness that kind of goes with starting middle school. And so just being kind of out of place. And I think those three things, a poor mindset, a poor diet, and no exercise ultimately led to me getting sick. I think those three things probably lead to a lot of people getting sick. But then what I've learned since then is that the opposite is true, that if you're able to clean those three areas up in your life, your diet, your exercise, and your mental state, that can also lead to health.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All three super important in terms of for no matter what it is, whether it's Crohn's or my experience, just about any other condition. Yeah, you kind of got to focus on all those all those areas. So, what were you told at the time about Crohn's and what you could expect?
Yeah. So, I didn't understand a ton about it at the time, other than I think it was a nurse or a nurse practitioner who probably explained it to me best. She just said that it means your intestines don't work like other people's. So I knew it had something to do with the stomach and with your intestines. I knew this is when I first heard it was an autoimmune disease. It was, gastrointestinal problem, that type of thing. I heard about inflammation, that there was inflammation going on in your stomach, in your intestines, but I didn't really understand a whole lot about it then, the disease then. And for many years after the fact, I still never really understood much about it. But one of the big things that kind of got me early on was the doctors were pretty adamant about two things. One was that you're sick for life. They told me that I was sick for life and that Crohn's was never anything that you could overcome or that you could cure from. They said there was no cure for it. The best you could hope to do was to quote, treat your symptoms, but you were going to be a lifelong patient. That was just very matter of factly stated. And even if you got to a point where you didn't have symptoms, you weren't cured or you weren't healed, you were in remission. And so to me, I really disagree with that term, and we'll talk about this later maybe, but it's kind of a medical term that implies that while you're symptom free, you're still sick and they've still kind of got you in this system. And so that was a big thing that really stuck with me early on. And then another big thing that stuck with me early on was how adamant the doctors were that food played zero role in it, that food played absolutely no role in the diagnosis, that it played no role in how you felt and in how you recovered, and ultimately, how you achieved remission or how you could, possibly treat yourself. So that was something early on that I just instinctively knew was wrong because I knew when I ate certain foods, I felt worse. When I ate other certain foods, I felt better. I mean, it was just so intuitive to me. And so one thing early on that I started doing was keeping a food diary, and I still do it to this day, every day writing down what I eat. And so I recommend that anybody, whether you have, Crohn's or not, but especially if you have Crohn's or you've just been diagnosed with something, you kind of have to create your own log. You kind of have to be your own best advocate. And so the beauty of creating a food log and recording your symptoms every single day is it creates this kind of journal where you can go back and look at, the good days and bad days and start to connect the dots and identify patterns where you were feeling bad, what were you eating on those days? And then times where you're feeling great, what were you eating those days? And then try to mimic those good days as much as possible.
Absolutely. I think what you just said is one of the most important things that someone can possibly do is a food diary. And like I've said that to so many people because it seems to be so closely tied to symptoms, what you eat, and not just for a bowel condition,
Right.
digestive condition. It's for um, I get inflammation if I eat certain foods. When I like my hands will get puffy and I'll get like arthritis again, which I don't have if I don't eat inflammatory foods. And so just paying super close attention to that, and most doctors are not going to tell you keep a food diary and pay attention to that, and because like you said, they also many of them are saying that food doesn't matter. So, um,
I
yeah.
know, and it just got me, like, how adamant they were about it. I mean, there was just, like it's almost like they've been brainwashed, and I think I've kinda learned that since then. I mean, nutrition is not really part of medical school, and if it is, it's a very small part of it. But I mean, just so adamant throughout these early years that food played zero role. And I remember my parents asking them about that, and it was just kind of immediately dismissed as well. It hasn't been studied. But again, it's just something you know to be true because, you're the one that's actually sick. You're the one that has to eat, and you just know that certain foods make you feel better and certain foods make you feel worse. And that's one other thing, and I'm sorry to go too long on this, but one of the things that early on I disagreed with is the doctors defined remission as basically a state of being able to eat whatever you want without symptoms. And that was something I disagreed with then, and I disagree with now because I think there's certain foods that we just shouldn't be eating, period. Even if you don't have symptoms or whatever. I just disagree with that. I believe in eating what you're supposed to be eating the right way, and being symptom free. The two go hand in hand, not just treating your body as kind of a steam shovel and putting whatever in it and then not having symptoms. So,
Right, right. I mean, we are, yes, we're not like garbage disposals where you can just like throw whatever down it. Like yeah, yeah, we've got to treat our bodies like they're race cars and put
yeah.
quality fuel in. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so you say, you believe like there's certain things that none of us should be eating, what would those be?
Yeah. So, Coke, fast foods, and sugar for the most part, like trying to avoid sweets, especially the ultra processed eater snacks. Those foods at all possible, I think, should be eliminated. Those were three food groups that I cut out very early on, and I know it made a big difference then, and I think they can make a big difference for everybody if you're willing to cut out those three groups. And then there's other things too that I've cut out then, but I think for most people, if you just start there, fast food, Cokes, carbonated beverages, those types of things, because people drink so many calories. There's just a lot of these drinks are just awful that people are consuming, and then the sugar itself, and that's kind of hard to avoid on some things, even a lot of homemade stuff. But if you can eliminate the store bought sugar, all the processed sugary snacks, those definitely need to go.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's so much coming out about that too. I mean, I follow a guy um who's an Alzheimer's doctor, and he's saying that like even one meal of processed food or one snack of processed food affects, your cognition, can affect
Oh,
someone's
yeah.
cognition, like, give them brain fog. So yeah, it's matters for all the body systems. So the diet that you started with, tell us more about that kind of early on, like what you found success with.
So, after I first got I guess you're talking about recently or right after I got diagnosed?
Well, the low FODMAP, I guess you kind of started with the low FODMAP, right?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, well, it was spring 2024 when I went down in the functional medicine rabbit hole and was able to heal myself naturally, and so that's when I started working with a functional medicine provider and, was ultimately able to heal myself naturally. And one of the things that he had me on was the low FODMAP diet. And I found that to be really helpful. So I always thought prior to working with him that my diet was pretty healthy. I mean, I thought it was healthier than most because there were just certain foods that I wasn't going to eat. And, I thought I was eating pretty healthy foods otherwise. But found that it really helped to fine tune my diet and get rid of things like, I was eating rice a lot and apples and, other fruits and vegetables, but he had me take those foods out. And low FODMAP, it's an acronym, and it basically removes short chain carbohydrates that can be difficult for, the GI system to digest and process, especially if you have UC or Crohn's. And I found that following that diet, fairly closely, 80 to 90% was really helpful in terms of getting rid of symptoms because again, I was just so naive, and this is why I think working with somebody really helps because I thought I was eating mostly healthy, but foods like I say, rice and apples were actually still causing symptoms, and I didn't put the two together. And so getting rid of those I found really helped in addition to Eliminate Heal, which was a liquid drink that he had me go on for about a week at a time. And that basically gives your gut a complete reset and restores the flora and fauna of your gut, starves out bad bacteria. But I found that kind of doing those two things in tandem worked really well for me.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, great. So, and you were seeing pretty significant symptom improvement
Oh
with
yeah.
those? Yeah.
Oh yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was just like it was just such a blessing to like finally, finally have relief. I was going to the bathroom, I mean, like 20, 25 times a day. And then to cut that down to two or three, I mean, it's just, it frees up so much time for one thing. And it's just such a relief for anybody who's going through that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I'm sure it changes your life to
It does. Yes, ma'am.
have that level of symptom relief. So, um, yeah, and at the time that you started the diet, were you still on the Remicade?
I was. Yes,
Mhm.
ma'am. So I went on Remicade, I guess, when I was in the eighth grade and
Okay.
then stayed on it all through high school and college. And then through the first part of grad school while I was down there. And I started working with this functional medicine provider while still doing the conventional treatment type thing. And I was really ready to go all in and just do the functional medicine thing because I knew that was actually making a difference. In that Remicade, I was, at times I felt fine while I was on it. At other times, I was still having symptoms. And it seemed like such a passive, dead end approach to the treating Crohn's. Like, was this really the plan? Just stay on this forever and, still have symptoms and still be a patient, still be sick for life, still have the colonoscopy every year and all the blood tests and all that stuff. And so I was really just ready for another approach. And so I went down the hired a functional medicine provider, was doing, the two side by side, then I kind of just reached the point where I was just willing to take this leap of faith and quit my doctor in medicine cold turkey and go all in on this functional medicine, natural healing approach. And that was, like I say, just this time 2 years ago, I think it was April 16th, 2024, when I wrote down in my journal that I decided to quit the doctor and just go all in on the natural approach.
Yeah, yeah, which is a big thing. And I mean, did you get any resistance from your family or others around you?
Oh yeah, nobody wanted me to do it. So
Yeah.
it was something I kind of had to do all alone. Which, it was kind of frustrating to have to go down that route without any support basically, but it was a decision that I had kind of spent months and months leading up to. Another big part of this, and maybe we'll talk about this more later, was you know, from the time I was 12, I'd been told that I was sick for life. And so that was really kind of embedded in my subconscious, I guess. It was just like a hard thing to get my mind out of that I had to go to the doctor regularly and all of that. So leading up to that decision to go cold turkey, I had spent several months, I mean, I guess about a year or so, researching other people who had healed themselves naturally, listening to podcasts with doctors and patients who had treated Crohn's naturally or cancer naturally and all these other types of things. And so, in doing that months in advance, I really started to build up this mental fortitude that I could also do the same thing, that I could also quit the doctor, quit the medicine, and be fine because I believed I would be. And it wasn't just I was quitting it cold turkey, I was choosing something else too. I was choosing this functional medicine alternative route in order to heal myself.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you were, yeah, you were taking a very thoughtful approach to it. I mean, you did your research, it wasn't like this rash overnight decision. You found other people who were doing the same thing and healing and kind of drawing hope and learning from their experiences. So, what were other pieces of your healing? You mentioned, supplements and exercise. Tell us more about that.
Sure. Yeah. So, not long after getting diagnosed, when I was 12, is when I started exercising for the first time. And I had been such an out of shape kid. I wasn't playing sports or anything, but I started playing outside more, started walking, running, doing calisthenics, that type of thing. And I noticed early on then that exercise was making a huge difference just in how I felt and how I looked. And so exercise and fitness, that has been a big part of my life ever since then. And that was another part of this too, the decision to quit the doctor cold turkey. I always thought that I was pretty, much healthier than your average patient or, healthier than most too, because I was trying to do everything I could on my end to take care of my body in terms of, doing the calisthenics and running and lifting weights, all that type of thing too. It just made me feel good. I definitely think that it helped keep symptoms down at times. Sometimes if I had symptoms, maybe exercise at least made me feel a little bit better.
Mhm.
So I kind of had the fitness side down. And then, as I mentioned, working with a functional medicine provider really helped fine tune the diet and, got me on the low FODMAP diet and, helped really fine tune what I was eating. But then also, what they were a huge help in doing was the supplements. And so early on and kind of throughout my experience, I was always interested in supplements like probiotics and all the different stuff because, they're advertised and there's a ton of them. You see them at the store. And I just kind of always thought that I should probably be on something because I thought, Crohn's, if it, if people who have Crohn's and colitis maybe have nutrient depletion, their intestines aren't absorbing as much as a healthy person's is, I should probably be taking something. But
Yeah.
my conventional doctors, that was just like never a thing with them. I was on an iron pill for a while, but in terms of like probiotics and like customizing a supplement regimen, that was never a thing they did. And then if you try to go and do it on your own, I think you're just going to be so overwhelmed because there are thousands of supplements out there. There's all the influencers who, and just all the people who kind of pitch their product like you need to be on this, you need to be on that. And so again, and I'm not like just trying to pitch the guy that I worked with, but like that was such a relief with working with someone in functional medicine, in functional nutrition, who could just kind of cut out all the noise and calm things down and say, based on your blood work, this, and this would be really helpful, or let's try this and let's try this one at a time. And I'll tell you a couple of the things that I was on, and we kept it really simple. I was really on just three things. I was on an omega-3 fish oil. I was on curcumin, which is another natural anti-inflammatory, and omega-3s, those are fish oil, that's a anti-inflammatory too. And then I was on a regimen of soil-based probiotics, and we tried 3 different ones, 1 at a time, then 2, and then 3, and I just noticed that taking those 3 things really made a big difference, and, of course, I was doing low FODMAP at the time, and I just noticed that those 3 things, it just kinda felt good to take. It helped to clear up the symptoms as well, so
Great. Yeah, yeah. Um, awesome. And yeah, I think it's important what you said, just to be working with somebody who's going to help you find what's right for you, because
right.
there are like so many probiotics out there, and knowing which one might be the best one is important, as well as other supplements, versus just kind of going, oh, everybody online says I should be taking
Yeah.
this. Yeah. So um yeah, a really important point. And Hadley, I know you've said that your faith was an important part of this. You want to share kind of what role that played?
Absolutely. So, I will say I grew up in the church. It's not like, I came to this recently or anything, but I guess I always had kind of a boring testimony because, or none at all really, just because I grew up going to church, Sunday school, church on Sunday, that type of thing. But it never really played much of a role, like in terms of healing myself or in terms of treating myself. I kind of separated the two, I guess. You have church and then you also go to the doctor, which is more of a secular scientific approach to treating yourself. But then this time a few years ago, and like I say, I guess about a year or so leading up to my decision to come off the come off the doctor and come off the medicine cold turkey, I just really started to lean into a few more aspects of faith. One, I really believe that we're created in the image of God, and I don't believe that He created any of us to be sick for life. I just really refuse to believe that. I think we're created for work. I think we're created for love. I think we're created to honor Him with in what we do with our bodies, what we say with our bodies, what we put in our body, and I just really started to reject the whole sick for life notion. Like, why would he create anybody to be sick for life? Like, how does that possibly honor him? And then realized then, that's not a label he put on me. That's a label that doctors put on me. And so, my identity is not in what the doctors say. My identity is in him and his son Jesus Christ. And so I also got really more into like really reading the gospel for the first time and just underlining how many times in there Jesus heals people. Like it's over and over and over again. He healed them. He healed them. He came to heal. And so, there's no medicine, there's no doctors, there's no hospitals. In Bible times, like Jesus, I think, is the great physician. I think doctors may treat, but Jesus heals. And so I was really willing. It's Matthew 7:7, I believe, where you ask and you shall receive. And so I started doing that for the first time ever, just asking God and Jesus to be healthy, like to be healed. And then just really starting to believe that I could be. And then finally, when I made that decision to come off, Remicade and quit my doctors and everything, just really trusting that I would be okay because they had me. Like you take their hand and trust that if you believe in them, you're willing to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you're willing to believe that God doesn't want you to be unhealthy and doesn't want you to be sick for life. And you're willing to couple that mindset with nutrition and with a fitness regimen, taking care of your body the way you're supposed to be. I just really believe that those three things are enough for anybody to achieve health.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. My experience of interviewing so many people aligns with that. And, and people may have different faiths, but it's sort of having this belief system and, um, some faith that you can get better and, yeah, just, like really believing that and
Absolutely. And I will say too, for anybody who is struggling with Crohn's or autoimmune disease, that really is the first step. I don't think you can go down the natural route, or I guess any healing route, if you're unsure, if you're just putting your toes in the water. Like you have to truly desire to want to be healthy. I really believe that's the first step. Because if you're just kind of going at it like, well, I'll try it, and if it works, great. But if not, I'll keep doing the conventional medicine thing. I don't think you're going to have a ton of success. I really believe that believing in yourself and an intense desire to get well is that first step to getting better and to overcoming whatever health challenge you have.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. That mindset and belief and do have to be the foundation, to because if you believe it's possible to get better, then you're going to take the steps and yeah, I mean it's such a different mentality than the I'm sick for life and there's nothing I can do about it.
That's for
So
sure.
so different. Yeah, and empowering to to realize that you have so much control over your health.
Exactly. And I think too, I think if you're kind of stuck in the cycle of believing that you're sick for life, it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in so many ways, and I definitely noticed that throughout the course of, high school and college years, as long as that's kinda in your head that you're sick for life, your body just kind of factors that in and says, "Okay, I guess we've gotta get sick every now and then just to make that true. If you are sick for life, then we gotta make it true and be sick every now and then." And I think the opposite is true too, that if you just tell yourself you're not sick for life, and that's why I prefer the term, calling Crohn's or any health diagnosis, even cancer, prefer to call it a health challenge instead of, a diagnosis or an illness or, chronic health problem, because a challenge is something you can overcome, and it kind of gives a lot more optimistic ring to whatever symptoms you're experiencing as opposed to, the diagnosis itself, because there's actually been some research on this that as soon as you give a label to whatever symptoms you're experiencing, it makes it harder for the patient to overcome them. Because as long as, you're just having the symptoms and, you view it as a challenge and, you believe that you have the agency and the power to overcome it, you're much more likely to overcome it. But once you kind of attach a label to it, it just kind of becomes something over your head and it becomes the albatross around your neck or whatever. Well, that's what I call Crohn's for a long time. It just makes it so much harder to finally throw that off because you kind of made it part of your identity.
Yeah, yeah. So true. And people are chasing the diagnosis most of the time. Like I really need to get to the bottom of this. I really need a diagnosis so that I can know what I'm dealing with. And sometimes, yeah, like you said, it's just then you have a label and Google is going to tell you what this label looks like and what it should look like and what the rest of your life is going
Right.
to be like if you type it in. And it sends people down, I think, often a negative path. But it's understandable why people are seeking diagnosis. But well, Hadley, what does your health look like today, and what do you do to maintain your health in a stable position?
Course, yeah. So I would say my health has never been better. I just truly feel great. Wake up every day feeling really well. And in terms of in terms of what I do, it's kind of the same thing that got me here in the first place. So that's another big part of healing yourself naturally. Once you do heal yourself naturally, take these steps down faith, nutrition, and fitness, and you get to this point where you're symptom free and you label yourself as healed, it doesn't end right there. Then you're kind of in this maintenance and you kind of have to stay in this very proactive mode. You have to you have to make sure you're still following the same diet and eating the right things. So I'll just say kind of a couple of foods that are my go-tos. I eat a lot of organic sweet potatoes and a lot of grass-fed beef and deer meat. Those are three great foods for me. They just work really well. I still exercise every single day. I love to exercise. I've started running a lot more, still do the calisthenics and the weightlifting. And then in terms of faith, just continuing to grow more spiritually, going to church on Sunday, Bible study in the middle of the week, getting in the Word every single day, and just taking a moment to thank God for a healthy body. I think that's something anybody can do. I think it's something we should really all do. Just being so grateful for every single day and just being great. Crohn's was a big problem for me for a long time, but it was really nothing compared to what other people have to deal with. I remember one time years ago when I was in the infusion room getting Remicade, there was like an 8 or 9 year old boy who was born without legs. And I'm like, this Crohn's is a big problem, but holy smokes, what have I really got to complain about? I mean, I'm just so grateful for every single day and to be symptom free. And so, just continuing to be really proactive in those three areas of my life definitely helped me keep and maintain my health and continue to get healthier.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, tell us about your book, which has just recently come out, and what it's about and who you wrote it for.
Yes, ma'am. So As I mentioned, like 10 times already, this time 2 years ago is when, I went down that functional medicine route and was able to heal myself naturally. And then by July 2024, I had been, I guess, 3 or 4 months without medicine and without doctors. And I was symptom free and just couldn't believe how good I felt. And I was interning in DC at the time. And I just remember waking up one day with this really strong conviction on my heart to write a book about it and to help other people, to help other, especially young men, even young women too, I think in high school, college age, who've got Crohn's or colitis, or they've got some type of autoimmune disease or a health challenge, and they've been told that they're sick for life. And so what I want to do is I want to give a ton of hope and optimism to people with Crohn's, but like I say, especially young people who've been diagnosed with a health problem and they've been told they're sick for life and they're worried they're just going to be stuck in this rut of conventional medicine of going to the doctor and going to the hospital and having regular treatments and tests, and they don't want that for themselves. They want something different. And so I just kind of want to be a, I don't want to say an inspiration, but just kind of give people a guide, a good starting point of, hey, here's what I went through, throughout school and college and all of that stuff. And here's what I've done since then. I was able to heal myself naturally. And so these are the insights that I really want to impart onto to younger people, but then also to, older people who still have Crohn's and colitis, um, and are, still looking for answers. And I'll say another thing too, it's been so rewarding, having done this book to get to talk to the parents of, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids who are getting Crohn's, who are getting diagnosed with something. And they love to ask, what do you wish you would have known? And my book is for them too, because I have great parents. This is nothing against them, but there was just so much we didn't know when I was diagnosed in terms of, how to treat myself, how to look for alternatives, that type of thing. And so I want this book to be a resource for parents of kids who are getting diagnosed as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I am sure it will be kind of a beacon of hope for them. So if you could go back and talk to your 12-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Oh my goodness. It's so many things, number one, I guess you're not sick for life. you know, view Crohn's right now as a temporary health challenge, but it's something that you can overcome. You're gonna, I guess you're gonna figure out a way. I'd love to, be able to talk with my parents too and just tell them, don't be afraid to look for alternatives. Don't be afraid to, go down the functional medicine rabbit hole and try to heal yourself naturally. You don't have to listen to everything the doctor says. You don't have to take every medicine or have every test. You know, have some confidence and really take agency over your health. I would say, just kind of some practical things too. You can still have really big dreams and really big goals, even though you have Crohn's. Girls are still going to like you. You can still go on dates and get married, that type of thing. So, you know, Crohn's it's a problem right now, but it's something you're gonna get over, and you're still gonna have a super great, amazing, fulfilling life.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I
Well,
show the book right quick?
oh yeah, show the
Yeah, I
book.
got a I got a copy of it with me.
Yes,
So
of
this is the
course.
book.
Yes, I
Yeah.
love the cover. Great cover.
Oh, thank you.
Drug-Free Crohn's, and tell people where they can find the book and follow you.
Yeah, so the book is available. It's out on Amazon right now, and I finally broke down and joined social media. So I'm on all the social media, Hadley Ott DFC on Instagram and X and TikTok, and I guess that's all of them. I also have a YouTube channel too, so Hadley Ott DFC.
Great. Lots of places where people can find you. Well, Hadley, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that this will reach people who need to hear it and be inspired by it, and then also um, congratulations on the book and all the best with it going forward.
Well, thank you so much. And I just want to say again, I love what you do with rebuilding my health. I think all of these stories, the stories that I've read on your site are really important for people to hear and to read. And I think we both kind of have the same goal, maybe just giving a lot of hope and confidence and inspiration for other people who are struggling with a health challenge, just to know that a healthier version of themselves does exist if you're just willing to put in the work. So thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah, yeah, my pleasure, and thank you for that. It's an honor and a pleasure to capture these stories and um, spread the word about what's possible. So, well, thank you, Hadley, and take care.
Thanks so much. You too.